All right. Hey guys, Hector here, coming to you live from Hardstyle. Sorry for the delay. Had a small technical setback. I was trying to set up the today's live episode on my laptop, but for whatever reason, I couldn't get the camera to work. No matter how many times I tried to reset the computer, so I'll have to mess with that later. So, coming back to you live on the phone. Today we're going to be focusing on deadlift secrets. So again, like I mentioned on Monday or yesterday it was, that I'm going to be focusing on very specific topics each and every day. And the one day that I don't have a topic for is Friday. But I've had a few recommendations from my subscribers, so I'm going to be taking them all into consideration before I come up with the topic for Friday. So today we're going to be talking about deadlift secrets. We're going to be talking about pretty much everything deadlift, barbell deadlift. We're going to talk about different stances. You know, what stance should you take? Where should you start? And we're going to eventually get all the way down to programming and how to build a deadlift, and you know, is it something that you'll need to do full time? Like, you know, how much training is going to be involved? We're going to talk about assistance exercises eventually. We're going to talk about you know, gear. You know, like, do you need to use a belt? Do you need to use wraps? So we're going to eventually get into that as this series of my episodes starts to evolve. So this is my first week of doing it, you know, specific topics. So we'll just see where it evolves, and we'll just kind of go from there. So, you know, the barbell deadlift, even the kettlebell deadlift, you know, should you be doing these exercises? The answer is yes. You know, for people that have back problems, you know, most of our back pain, believe it or not, stems from us sitting down for long periods of time. So as a society, we sit a lot. We sit more than we've ever sat in the history of mankind. We sit when we go to work. We sit when we're either at school or reading. And then when we get off of work or we get out of school, we go home and we sit. And then we sit when we eat, and we sit when we watch TV. So we're doing a lot of sitting. And even in a lot of training programs, we go to a gym. Like, let's say we go to a gym and we're trying to get healthier, we're trying to move better, we're trying to get stronger. So we'll go and we'll sit down on machines, and we'll sit down in a machine like a leg curl machine, and we'll sit down in a pressing machine, and so we're constantly sitting. So this has this can be very detrimental to our health. It's specifically our posture, and that kind of stems down into everything else. So one of the deadlift, whether you're doing sumo deadlift, conventional deadlift, doesn't matter. One of the first things that we need to make sure that we establish is that we need to make sure that we establish that we can move strong, that we can move well. This is something I'll be covering in later deadlift secret episodes, is establishing a hip hinge pattern. So the hip hinge is probably our most functional movement, our most functional exercise, so to speak, that we have as individuals. The hip hinge is something that we develop as children, as infants, and it's something that we should never lose. So one of the first things we need to establish is, how well do we move? How strong are we in our mobility? Do we even have the required mobility to do things like deadlifting? So I'll get more into the details of that on another day, but I'm just going to cover a couple of bullet points of more or less what you'll know I'll be talking about on Deadlift Secrets Day. Now, stance. Let's say we have the required mobility and that strength in that mobility to start deadlifting. Okay. I always recommend, the way we teach our students is we teach all of our students to learn how to deadlift with a kettlebell first before we progress them into learning how to deadlift with a barbell. Here's an analogy that I like to make. My background is in martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Unfortunately, I didn't wrestle in high school. I really wish they had a wrestling program. I was a big avid fan of wrestling. So after I got out of school, right, when I left school, they put the wrestling program in, which was kind of sad because I missed it, right? Anyway, let's say a wrestler that's been wrestling from high school, maybe they even wrestled in college. Let's say they start trying to train jiu-jitsu, okay? Or even a jiu-jitsu guy that tries to go into wrestling, either or, vice versa. They're gonna have a really solid foundation no matter what sport they're going to cross-train. So a wrestler is gonna have a good foundation of ground movement, right? They're gonna move pretty well, they're gonna be really strong, and they'll have an easy carryover to learning jiu-jitsu. Now, they gotta work on their guard and submission skills, etc., and learning how to play from their back. But overall, a wrestler is gonna have a really good carryover to jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu, if I'm a BJJ black belt, I've never really trained pure like freestyle wrestling before, but if I did take up freestyle wrestling, I would have a good understanding of the ground. I would have a good foundation as far as a base. I'd have the strength, the required mobility. Now, the thing I would have to get better at is not going to my back, right? So there's a few things you would need to tweak, but they're similar. It's like they're cousins, but they're not directly, they're not, brother and sister. They're cousins. They're similar, same but different. So learning how to deadlift with a kettlebell is going to give you a much better foundation than learning how to deadlift with the barbell, okay? Because with the kettlebell, for one, it's going to be safer. It's a much more submaximal load, and you can keep the kettlebell closer to your center of mass. So the goal of the deadlift is obviously to lift up the max amount of weight that you eventually can, right? You can lift a lot of weight with it. But the goal for safety and to have a strong deadlift is you have to keep the weight as close to your center of mass, as close to your hips as possible to be able to pull the most amount of weight and safely. The more that the load gets out in front of the body, the harder it is going to be to accomplish the deadlift, and the more strain and the more stress you're going to put in your back, okay? Just like jiu-jitsu. The closer my opponent is to my hips and the closer my hips are to his hips, the easier it is going to be for me to move him, to sweep him, right? Same thing with wrestling. On a shoot, when I'm going for a takedown, the more that I can penetrate the hips, get my mass closer to his center of mass, the easier the takedown is going to be. The further away my center of mass is from whatever center of mass I'm trying to move, whether it's a training partner or the barbell, the further away my hips are from that center of mass, the more challenging it is, the more leverage I lose to be able to successfully accomplish the lift or sweep the guy or take the guy down, right? So this is all it's all connected. So, well, what stance should we start with on the deadlift? You're going to hear a lot of back and forth deadlift purists. We'll say, well, conventional deadlift. You need to, conventional deadlifting is proper deadlifting. Well, then how the heck are you going to pick up a heavy rock up off the ground? How are you going to pick up, a training partner, right? You can't conventional deadlift them up. You have to get into more of a sumo stance, right? Doesn't mean sumo's better than conventional. But to say that conventional is better than sumo because you got to pull the weight a greater distance is ridiculous, okay? You need to know how to deadlift with many different styles, many different positions, and many different, the distance of your legs, etc. Now, you're going to have a greater advantage if you're starting to want to compete more with the deadlift, like a powerlifting or the tactical strength challenge. You're going to want to find which stance works best for you. And for some people, as you start to build a bigger deadlift, it all comes down to leverages, femur length, leg length, arm length, all that will kind of come into play to figure out what stance is best for you. Sumo deadlift is no better than conventional. Conventional is no better than sumo. They both have a give and take. So what are a couple of things, a couple of give and takes? So the conventional deadlift, yes, you're pulling the weight a little bit further, but you're gonna have a bigger lever because you're hinging back and you're gonna have a bigger lever going this way. Your head's going this way, so you're gonna have a bigger lever arm, and it's gonna be more challenging to keep a straighter back and your chest up, okay? Compared to the sumo and the conventional, you're gonna have your feet are gonna be roughly like hip to shoulder width, depending on the size of your hips. Your feet are gonna be hip to shoulder width. Slight external rotation to get the glutes fired up, and your hands will be on the outside of your legs. Very general explanation of what the conventional lift looks like. The conventional lift is a lot more of a push. You're pushing with your legs a lot more. It's gonna break off the floor a lot faster, but it's gonna have a slower finish, okay? The sumo deadlift, which is the way I pull, there's a lot less shear force on your spine, on your back, because you're able to keep a more upright torso. More of the stress is going to be in your hips, and you're going to get more push with your quads. Okay? But one of the things that makes the sumo different from conventional is the sumo pull is going to be a lot more pull than it is a direct push, because now your legs are wider, and you've got to like put, you're going to get a push on your quads to drive your legs out like you're trying to spread the floor apart, but you've also got to get a lot of pull. So too many lifters I see try to apply conventional deadlift concepts and techniques to the sumo, and they wonder why they struggle, and they say that the sumo is no good, right? Or maybe to them the sumo is harder. No, it's just understanding a few concepts and understanding better of understanding the why behind, positioning with sumo, and it helps you to understand the how to do it, right? So the sumo allows you to keep a more upright torso, more stresses in the hips. You're going to get more push with your quads. Versus the conventional, you're going to push. You're still going to be a push, but you're going to get more glutes and hamstrings, right? More hamstrings, a lot more hamstrings and glutes. You're still going to get glutes and hamstrings with the sumo. They're just challenged a little bit differently. The sumo, because your legs are further apart, is going to break off the floor a lot slower, which is where it can kind of get into your head. Because if you start to go towards a near max pull with a sumo, as soon as you pull, it may not break right away, and so people will kind of give up on the sumo. You got to kind of grind it out a little bit. But the sumo allows you to keep a straight posture, more hip stress, the hips are in the back. It breaks off the floor slower, but it's got a faster finish, okay? It's got a quicker finish than it does with the conventional. Another thing with the sumo is there's really no room for error. If you're out of position in any way, the lift is pretty much over. You can't out-muscle it like you can with the conventional. With the conventional, when you kind of if you come out of position, you can use a lot more of your back and just kind of muscle through the lift. You can't do that with sumo. If you're out of position, even the slightest bit, the lift is over. You lose the lift. So those are a couple of different differences with the sumo on the stance. So, and this is something that you just have to play with. So somebody that has, let's say, longer legs, but they've got a shorter torso, okay, and maybe longer arms, they're more likely going to do better with the conventional compared to the sumo. Somebody that has shorter legs and a longer torso, they're going to probably pull bigger weight sumo, because you want to use a combination of the shorter legs and the longer torso. If you try to conventional deadlift with the longer torso, you've got a bigger lever arm to try to pull from. So if you switch to sumo, you can take that torso and kind of get it out of the way, and you can get a better angle with the sumo. But both are great lifts. The deadlift is the number one lift that everybody should be doing. If you have back problems because of the way that you move, if you're not necessarily Like if you're not a health problem, like I've got degenerative disc or something like that, but you have you just sit all day, or maybe you had a previous back injury and you had surgery and you have clearance now to exercise, teaching somebody how to deadlift is going to give them so much more back out of their life. So the deadlift is something everybody needs to be doing. The deadlift will build a stronger abs than any ab machine, than any crunch, than any side bend, than any of these little foofy gadgets you see on TV and you even see in your traditional commercial gyms. These, weights that you get on and you crunch down. You don't need to do any of that stuff, okay? You need to get stronger by working on the deadlift. And the more that you work the deadlift, hey Dad, the more that you work the deadlift, the stronger your back's gonna get, okay? And then from there, your abs will get a lot stronger too. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about using a belt or anything like that right now. I'll get into that into another episode. But one thing I am working on for you guys for Deadlift Secrets is I'm working on a deadlift program. It's more or less not even really a program, but it's kind of like a cheat sheet, basically learning how to do the deadlift. And I'm going to put that link in the comment section below. I've created something called, I'm got to change the name on it because it turns out someone has something similar with the same name, but it's like a poster or something like that. Anyway, but I'll share the link here below. It's something free that I put together for you guys. It's an easy download. It's called the Deadlift Blueprint, which is going to be changed to Deadlift Secrets for technical reasons. But Deadlift Blueprint or Deadlift Secrets is basically going to take you through step by step and teach you how to build a deadlift, the secrets behind building a deadlift, okay? And that's something I'm going to put in the comment section below. If you want that, if you think that that's something of value to you and you need like something to guide you step by step because maybe you don't have me at your facility or at your place or training with you in your gym or something like that, and you want basically me as a training partner, I have something I've been putting together for you guys. So if you want something like that, like, comment, say something on here. If you're enjoying the video, please click share, say a little something about what we're talking about today. Turn your notifications on if you're enjoying the video. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. Really simple. It's first episode of Deadlift Secrets. So deadlift is the most functional exercise there is. It is pound for pound the king of all lifts. It's going to build a strong and resilient back. You got to make sure that you have the required mobility and strength inside that mobility to deadlift. So establishing a really solid hip hinge. When you have a really good hip hinge, doesn't matter what deadlift style you use, whether you use conventional or sumo or suitcase deadlift, doesn't matter. But you have to have a really good hip hinge. Then from there, which stance should you choose? You should master and practice both stances, both classic or conventional, I call it classic style deadlift, or sumo deadlift, okay? And you're just gonna have to play around with foot position and you'll find the most comfortable position for you. Again, just to recap for some people that just kind of joining us, the conventional deadlift, your feet are going to be hip to shoulder width, hands are on the outside of the bar, and it's going to be more of a push with the legs, and it's going to be more of a push, quicker break off the floor, slower finish. Sumo deadlift, feet are going to be outside the hips or even shoulder width or outside the shoulders. Your grip is going to be inside of the feet. You're going to be able to keep a much straighter torso. You're going to get a good push from your quads, but the sumo is a lot more of a pull right after the push. Conventional is pure push, okay? So a lot of people don't pull enough on the sumo, and that's one of the things that separate it. So those are a couple things that distinguish the difference between conventional and sumo, and you're just gonna have to play whichever one works best for you. So that's pretty much all I got for today's first episode of Deadlift Secrets. Like I said, I'm gonna be posting a comment below on where you can get your Deadlift Blueprint as a free download. The Deadlift Blueprint is going to coach you step by step and teach you how to build a deadlift. And then from the deadlift secrets and the deadlift blueprint, I'm going to be covering a lot of that in next week's Deadlift Secrets episode. So I'm going to send you the link below. Get Deadlift Blueprint, and that way you can have something to follow along when we get to our next episode of the Deadlift Secrets. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry I was running a few minutes late, technical camera difficulties, but we got it all squared away. So Deadlift Secrets, how to build a strong deadlift, and eventually I'm going to teach you how to build a strong deadlift without belts, wraps, straps, and even assistance exercises. Have a great day, guys. I'm going to put the link below. Make sure that you get your free copy of the Deadlift Blueprint. Bye.